So we should do some kind of introduction. Well, I think we should go into it in this casual, relaxed way that we've already done.
Perfect.
But anyway,
Natural
introduce
and
yourself,
friendly,
sir. For people who don't know you, who are you?
My name's Mike, and I write games. Some of the games that I write are on this shelf behind me. There's Gaslands Refueled, I write that. And this one that you can't quite see is A Billion Suns, which is my new game. Oh, I'm also fronting it here because, yep. So yeah, I write tabletop miniature games. I've written 3 so far that have been published through Osprey, and I've got a couple of others cooking along. And I also write and contribute to the Blaster magazines,
so good.
anthologies. You'll find me in the hallowed pages of this. We're about to release volume 3 of Blaster, maybe in early May, and that's got
Excellent.
That's got some good stuff for Gaslands in it.
Good.
That's me.
Good. I've got the first 2 issues. It's brilliant. I'm Peter, also known as Universal Head. I'm running the channel that you're probably watching this on, unless Mike is putting it on his channel. I don't know. And I run the Esoteric Order of Gamers. I also do graphic design for lots of board games as well. I'm probably most known for doing rules, summaries, and references for some bizarre reason, hundreds of them, which are at the Esoteric Order of Gamers website. And
what an incredible resource, Peter. I'm not sure I've been permitted to fanboy on you yet, but
please fanboy.
About 50% of my boxed games, including 3 or 4 of the ones up there, I open and go, oh, thank goodness, Peter's rule summary I've already printed out and is in here. I can remember how to play.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. I'm glad they're doing something useful out there.
Oh,
the time I spent on the damn things. I was just writing one for Dystopian Wars as I was waiting for this meeting.
Right, the nice new one,
the new version. And just while I'm talking about Dystopian Wars, check out these, will you?
I know.
They're amazing. They're
I hadn't realised quite how large they are, but the all the Dystopian and Firestorm stuff is. I'm always surprised because the big ships, either the spaceships or the naval ships, are always like bigger than your fist, which is which is useful. I don't know. And I've of course magnetized the weapons, but they're popping on there. They look pretty cool. Oh no, he's gone. Some Firestorm Armada ones within reach.
Look at that.
These are also extremely large. Oh, they're
nice.
Blown out.
They've got to be hand-sized, really, don't they?
Exactly.
No, look, I was just saying, look, I've magnetized the weapons so they pop on the tear and I can change the.
Nice. Otherwise, who do you know who they're shooting at?
Well, exactly. They must be pointed in the appropriate direction. So, oops, these ones just sort of roll off. Anyway, so yeah.
I think if you stick 2 Dystopian Wars ships together, then you get a really good Billion Suns spaceship.
That's a good idea. Oh, hold on. Oh, let's try it.
That's twice the price.
Let's try it live. Check it out.
Oh, so studly. Look at that.
That is amazing. Wow, that's a really good idea.
That was not mine. Somebody posted that in the Billion Suns group.
Nice.
Very good idea it was too.
So let's just get straight into Billion Suns.
Sure.
The new game by Mike Hutchinson. And I've been giving it a read over the weekend. I've been reading it in bits, actually, and dying to play it. I'm just wondering which of my models I'm going to use for it. And I know that there are some available by a different. Someone has made some specially. Have they made some specially? Yet?
Tony, who runs Brigade Models here in the UK, and I got chatting at a show a couple of years ago, and I said I was doing this game and I was looking for some models to put in the book, and his were particularly lovely and weren't tied to a game system particularly. And so he and I shook hands when you were allowed to, and his are the models that I entirely feature in the book, but there's nothing official. There's nothing more official about that relationship. The game itself is written, like most Osprey Blue books, to be totally agnostic to what models you use and indeed what bases you put them on.
The only thing I was thinking is that you need a range from sort of fighters all the way up to battleships and everything. I initially thought, I'll use X-Wing models, but of course the battleship ones, well, not even the battleship, the large spaceships are like this big, which is a bit crazy. And Armada has the little ones with the little fleets, or not little fleets, the little attack wings of the tiny ships.
I quite often play with my Armada collection.
Oh, right. Okay.
those work fine. The bases for Armada are a bit big and clunky. I've actually rebased my Armada ships.
Ooh, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, which was quite a bold move. But I mean, I've written my own spaceship game. Like I don't need the bases.
No, that's understandable.
But you can
Armada.
Well, yeah. You can of course use like counters and stuff for the fighter wings and stuff. If you had sort of ordnance counters from Drop Zone Commander or Battlefleet Gothic or whatever, that would work too. But I use Armada because it's got the nicest squadron models.
Yes. I do have an old set of Battlefleet Gothic kicking around though, which I've never actually built the figures. I'm horrified to say it's been sitting there for years and I've never built them.
eBay shudders with anticipation. Unbuilt Battlefleet
Gothic models. You're not getting it. It's mine. Keep your hands off it. It's mine.
I've hoarded it for this long. I will continue to hoard it.
Yes. No, I'm hoarding it for 1 billion suns. I've been waiting for the perfect intergalactic battle game. And the big thing is, of course, that we must talk about is the fact, oh, look, I'm going into interview mode. Isn't it funny? Is the table thing, the multiple table thing. And when I first read this, and for people who don't know 1 billion suns yet, what are you thinking? Go out and get it. But the game is played on multiple tables. And when I say tables, they just have to be tiny spaces. You can break a 6x4 table up into 3 spaces, something like that. And ships are jumping into the different spaces on this board. And that's what I was going to ask. Why did you call them tables? Why aren't they called spaces?
Because I didn't think of it.
Oh,
spaces would have worked. Spaces would have worked.
Thank you. Edition 2, I'll be expecting my check in the mail. Thank you very much.
We'll put that into version 2. So I'm looking at your board game collection behind you, and I'm wanting to like take down the 3 cubes in the middle there, starting with the giant Joan of Arc one, and like you could use those 3 little sort of, what would that be, like a 18 inches by 18 inches. You could use those as the tables for Billion Suns, and then you could sort of just swap between the different compartments. I've played it where we had a gaming table, another small side table, and a kitchen counter. We even played one game during playtesting where we used a baby's high chair as one of the tables. It doesn't really matter, because the way that you set up objectives is you spread the objectives across however many tables you've got, and then the way that you start deploying ships, because you don't have deployment zones, is you put a jump point down, I put a jump point down, you put a jump point down, I put a jump point down, and then we start jumping battle groups of ships in proximity with those. So there isn't actually really a way to set up the table in a way that benefits one player or the other. So one of the things that's slightly unintuitive when you arrive on game 1 is like, it just says put the objectives down anywhere, and you're like, but you haven't told me how to make a good game. And the weird thing is, it sort of doesn't matter, because if you put everything close together, then you'll have a really tense firefighty game, and you need to buy the kind of ships that works for. And if you spread them super far out and put them on lots of different tables, then you're going to need stuff with range. And so
if you have a small space, the battle automatically becomes contained in a way because of the way you place the
because one of the features for that is because ships, sort of medium and larger ships, have these heavier weapon classes which have minimum ranges. So if you bring in a frigate, it's got a really decent 2d8 attack dice, which is it's a heavy railgun or light railgun. I think it's a light railgun, but that's got a minimum range of 9 inches and a maximum range of 18. So if you're in a contained space, if you jump in that thing, it's going to be really difficult. You're going to have to sit right back from wherever it is that you're jumping in from in order to be within that 9-inch range. So it probably makes much more sense to bring in some gunships which have a 0 to 6 range, because they're much more flexible in that small space. Whereas if you play on a 6x4, it's actually possible to put a few jump points down spread across a large table, because you can put multiple jump points on a single table, and then maybe some action happens around jump point 1, and I jump in a monitor or something in jump point 2, which has got a really long ranged gun, and I can kind of artillery fire from one sort of area of combat to another. But this is the point of A Billion Suns, is that this is all emergent during play, depending on the tables that you've set up, depending on the objective spread out that you've put, and depending on what your opponent chooses to deploy. what kind of class of ships they start buying into the to the game.
And the ships jump between the different spaces during the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's what I love.
At the beginning of a movement step, or just after you've moved, you can do what's called jump hop, which is if you're within jump range of a jump point, you can just pick that ship up and pop it down next to another jump point, and that's how you move from one table to another if you need to. And often it's a super good idea too.
Isn't there an advanced rule where if they come jumping in, there's sort of like a shockwave as well as from the jump?
Yes. So in this game, recon ships and fighter wings, which are the very smallest and cheapest, they can be quite powerful because you can get a swarm of them and they can be quite flexible. But when they are foolishly sat next to a jump point, you can jump in something like a frigate, and that gravitational distortion wave jump shocks them out. It just goes and we'll roll enough dice to probably smash them all to pieces.
Fantastic. So I think it's one of those things where, the first time I heard it, I went, that's annoying, because I'm so used to having everything all perfectly set up at the start, and everything's painted in the lovely scenery and it's all perfect. And this is much more on the fly, go as you. And also the thing I love about it is that you don't decide what the forces are before the game. You decide during the game how many credits you want to spend to get the different ships. I was playing Wildlands the other day for the first time, and I just love the idea. It's incredibly simple compared to this, but just the idea that you had your faction, and you knew where they were going to come on. The other player didn't. You could decide when they came on in response to what was actually going on the board. And immediately, it was far more interesting than just saying, "Okay, all the guys are set up. Let's go for it." It just added a whole new aspect to the gameplay.
Yeah, and
no one's really done that much in miniatures games.
Well, that's it. I don't really think it's necessarily better, because it's sort of asking some different questions, but it just felt that it was so unexplored that, particularly because of what I was trying to do with Billion Suns, which is create something uniquely science fiction-y that does things that only spaceship games could possibly do, rather than just reskinning a naval engagement and making it with spaceships, which is fine and cool, and I enjoy that too, but it's just not like it's possible to do something different with spaceship games, and I kind of felt like there was some space that Boom Boom hadn't been explored. And so making it work has been really fun, but it doesn't invalidate the other way of playing. It's just that there's so much to explore here. The weird thing is that you bring up Wildlands, like the way that the objective system work, and the fact that you have to get jobs done in the basic play mode of a Billion Suns, which is called the core systems contract set, and I'm going to be releasing more contract sets, but that's the one in the book. The fact that you buy in your ships, the fact that there are these sort of jobs to get done,
and this is driven by a deck of normal cards as well. You draw
to score out the contracts. A few people have said it's not really a war game, it's more of a board game that you play with miniatures, which I think is interesting, because in some regards there is that, there's a sort of economy and sort of victory point economy and worker placement thing that starts to tick in your brain. You're like, ooh, okay, this is more of a board gamey puzzle. But at the same time, it's more analog and free than probably any war game that's been written before, because of the way that you set up and you can deploy anywhere. The thing about board games is they tend to be extremely discrete, and this is the total opposite of discrete, because just things can go anywhere. Even rank them up and charge each other, war games are more discrete than this, because you have deployment zones and so on. So it's interesting, because I think it's a bit like a board game comparison is okay, and it's apt. I don't think it's damaging to say that, but it's also it's at the very other end of the spectrum in some regards, because of the free.
But it also strikes me, if you're playing a few games, that you can decide for this particular engagement, you don't want to get very involved in it. You can save your forces for the next one, or save your credits for the next one. Would that be a viable strategy? Or
so there is a
contract wasn't worth getting.
Yeah, there is a campaign system. What do you mean, within a game or within multiple games?
Oh, within multiple games. So if you're playing a series of games or a campaign or something, and you can just decide, they jump in something, and you just think, oh, well, I'm just not going to go there, or you put in something as a kind of feint or and you save your credits for the next battle, something like that.
Or even within a single stand-up game, that is definitely a viable question to be asking, because it's it's quite possible that if the other guy commits too much, you can spot that before you can spot that early and go, oh, actually, I'm going to underbid you here. I'm not going to spend as much bringing in as larger fleet. And then I only have to get a portion of the jobs done to pay back what I'd spent that you do. So you've controlled a lot of the boards. You're projecting a lot of power. But if I can sneak in and grab a couple things from underneath it, then that's a viable tactic. And quite often when two players are shooting at different ends of that spectrum, you do get quite an interesting game, because there's sort of cat and mouse, Millennium Falcon escaping the Star Destroyers type of a game emerges. But equally, it might be the case that you both pull a little bit down, and then someone escalates, so you escalate, and then it kind of rises up, and by the end of the second turn, you're both slugging it out with.
I forgot to check. It's multiple players as well. You can have multiple players, can't you?
Yeah, it plays up to 4. It's tested up to 4. I'm sure it will play. It will mechanically function for more than 4 players, but fun is not guaranteed.
So that's great. I mean, if someone else is having this big biffer, you can sneak in with your Firefly and grab the gear and run out again, jump out again.
Actually, that was a really difficult part to get working. There was a bug in the middle of the development of this game where if one person went really big and one person bet really small, whoever was left in the middle was basically completely out of options, and it was they could neither compete with the heavy hitter nor could they underbid the underbidder. So that was that was a problem that took a lot of work.
So how'd you sort that out?
I can't remember. As I was describing it, I thought, that sounds like an interesting problem. I wonder what the solution was.
I wonder what I did.
I remember it was 2 years ago.
How long did it take to develop?
I got quite a lot of runway on this one, so I pitched it to Offspray in. I should have double checked my facts. It was just as the Last Jedi was coming out, because I remember getting an email back from Phil at Offspray saying, "Oh, I've just walked out the Last Jedi. You've caught me just in the mood for space combat." And then he said, "Oh, it will come out in May 2020," which seems ludicrously far away. So it was I had sort of 2 years notice in order to hand the game in. Which plus production schedules means about 18 months to work on it. So I worked on it right until up to the deadline, and then we had some production problems, and the game got delayed by 6 months, and then it got delayed by 6 months again for some other production problems. What was supposed to be a May 2020 release turned ultimately into a February 21 release. So I took that extra window of time and put it back out for. It was past beta testing, so I called it gamma testing, and I gave it to the playtesting group on the Facebook group again, and said, "Here it is. This is broadly the final version with some bits and pieces cut out, redacted for the sake of keeping some value back." And that was fantastic, because it meant that we found a few things, typos and problems and so on. But it also meant that when the game came out, there was a bunch of people who'd played it quite recently, and so they could be kind of ambassadors for the new players.
So how many people on Facebook are playing it? How many people are playtesting it for you?
The playtesting group was quite a few. It was sort of 200-ish.
Oh really? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I did get a pretty decent set of feedback.
Yeah.
There's always some superstars within a group like that. So there's probably 10 or 15 people who really actively provided input, who got really under the skin of it.
And then there's the people who sort of, in the last month come back and say, "Oh, look, your basic premise doesn't really work. I think what you should do is this."
Well, what's great is you get people who only attempt to play it maybe once, and they provide some feedback, and sometimes that feedback can be incredibly useful, because it's just like, I knocked on the front door and I couldn't understand where the doorknob was, and then that's really helpful information to try and because this game particularly is a little bit odd, which is why when you open the rulebook, you'll find I sort of introduced the game in a couple of different ways several times, starting with a tutorial sort of demo, a one-player demo game, and then lots of examples and stuff throughout the game.
The other crucial question is why are D4 gross?
Have you seen those things? What an abomination!
D4 are gross.
They don't.
It's on my notes. D4 are gross. Why?
Repulsive dice. I mean, they don't.
They're just misunderstood.
You shake them, and then you roll them, and they don't so much roll as just insult you with their presence. And then you look at them, and you're like, "Well, which number do you want me to be indicated?" And you're like, "Oh, the one that's slightly hidden at the bottom." Repulsive dice.
Bottom. It's the one at the top, isn't it?
It depends what kind of dice you got, but mine are all written at the bottom.
For a moment there, I thought I'd been reading them wrong for the last 30 years. That'd be horrifying.
I'm trying to find a D4, but I think I've melted them all down for slag.
Well, they are physically dangerous as well, which is the thing. Yeah. I do remember the excitement when I first saw them, though, in the Dungeons and Dragons basic set or something, and I went, "What is that? I've never seen anything like it.
Monstrosity is
unbelievable."
See, my personal dice is the D12. What a beautiful and regular object. And when you roll that, you really know you're rolling a dice.
And it's got big faces, hasn't it? Yeah,
it's lovely.
The D20 I've always found a bit, those faces are a little tiny.
Also, the D20 with its triangular faces reminds me a little bit of the D4.
Just give me a moment. I present to you the most ridiculous dice, the 30-sided dice.
Ooh.
Yes. It just keeps rolling.
Is it sequential as well? So you can count from 1 to 30, like with some life. Looks like it.
I have no idea. It's just
I saw an 11 next to a 10.
DCC. You never use it. Dungeon Crawl Classics. There's a whole lot of things. There's 5-sided dice. There's all kinds of weird stuff. There's 7-sided dice.
5s.
Yeah, that's a strange game.
But yeah,
do you play any role-playing games?
Yes. My youth was spent playing. I don't have it on my shelf because it's in a ring binder. But my youth was spent playing Wafrup.
Of course.
And Vampire the Masquerade, although we never really understood it because we were too young. And reading Rifts, but never playing it.
Rifts, that takes me back.
And of course playing a goodly amount of Call of Cthulhu, which is my absolute favourite. Although it was completely fired by Trail of Cthulhu. So I play all of my Cthulhu gaming using Ken Hite's Trail of Cthulhu, which is just exactly the same except loads better, and I hugely recommend.
Kenneth Hite's done a lot of amazing stuff, hasn't he? Yes, I hear him pop up on the podcast, the HP Podcraft podcast. Do you listen to that?
No, I haven't actually. I do listen to a bunch of Ken Hite yabbling on Ken
Fantastic.
And Robin talk about stuff.
I know he does his own thing, but he's often a guest on the HP Podcraft one, which is Chad Pfeiffer and I've forgotten his name. Another guy.
We'll take a listen.
Very funny guys. I'll pop that in later in the edit. Two really funny guys who started off doing HP Lovecraft stories and now just do weird tales and stuff like that. But
outstanding,
really entertaining. But the Kenneth Hart's a friend of theirs. What is it about Trail of Cthulhu that's particularly
so Trail of Cthulhu is it basically identifies the core mechanical problem with Call of Cthulhu, which is the spot hidden roll. So I've been a keeper for Call of Cthulhu for most of my life, and the problem you've got is you set up an interesting investigative scene, and then the players walk in and you go roll spot hidden or roll library use or whatever, and they fail it, and then you're like, well, dang it, now I have to hide the clue in a second place so that you can make another roll so that you can pass that one. So instead of that ridiculous dance, what Trail
just came into my head, Chris Lackey, Chad Pfeiffer and Chris Lackey. There we go.
Perfect. So instead of that ridiculous dance between spot hidden rolls being failed and so on, what Trail of Cthulhu says is it's based on the Gumshoe system, which was written by Robin D. Laws.
Yes.
And that system basically says, what happens in cop shows is it's never the fact that they fail to find the evidence. What it is that they find the evidence and they fail to make the connections to figure out who done it. And so in Trail of Cthulhu, as long as you've got the requisite skill, like as long as you've got some points in library use or you've got some points in locksmith or something, then if there's a clue that's like, if you open the correct book, there's something exciting there, or if you look at the lock, you notice that it's been tampered with and therefore has been broken into earlier, you automatically get the clue if you have the skill. There's no test for the investigation. So you walk in and these sorts of like extremely capable investigators sort of look around and go, "Oh, that's something interesting. That's something interesting." And then, as the keeper, you just give them all the handouts, and then they go, "Oh, crumbs, what's going on here?" And then there are tests and so on for what are called they're like the actiony abilities. So if you're doing something actiony like dodging or driving a car, then you roll dice and you spend points from your pool. But when you're just doing investigating, everything automatically succeeds, and it really flows. It means that you can just concentrate on the investigative story and the procedural kind of cops side of things, and it's totally wonderful. And then the other thing that's really nice about it is that all the monster entries are written in this really Ken Hite way, where each monster provides like 4 or 5 alternative reality versions of what's going on. So there's no canonical Cthulhuoid bestiary entry. What Ken Hite does is say, well, we all know that this, we all know what the Call of Cthulhu rulebook says. Here's some options about maybe what else might be going on that's slightly weird, which keeps things fresh.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I think it's,
cool.
I think it's super good.
Okay. Oh, I must try that out. Yeah. What about Pulp Cthulhu? Have you tried that?
I haven't played Vault Cthulhu, although that is sort of that's the default way that we tend to play.
What kind of Arkham horror-y, really? Shoot the monsters kind of thing.
Well, we played a couple of years ago. We played through the first few chapters of Masks of Nyarlathotep, which I hadn't run since I was a kid, and the group that I was playing with, just a couple of guys and me, they are more into Indiana Jones escapades and learning spells and then using them. So we did conclude our chapter 3 with somebody summoning an absolutely monstrous black worm of doom to take out the big bad, which is all fun, but it's not textbook Lovecraftian.
It's not classic.
But it is. It is fun.
I've got the original Masks of Nyarlathotep sitting here mocking me, having never played it. The original book. So many things to play and so little time.
Yeah, that is actually,
and also about 5,000 versions of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Oh, you've got them all, have you? Yeah, I've actually played Masters of Asset 3 times, I think, but I've never finished it. I've never made it to Shanghai.
Never made it to Shanghai. The other thing we were going to talk about, because we've been discussing this on Twitter back and forth a bit, which is Adeptus Titanicus.
Oh, dear.
You realise it's your fault that I went out and bought the starter set of Adeptus Titanicus.
I'm acutely aware of it, and I feel like I've done you a disservice and made you cross, which wasn't my intention. I was trying to explain that there's an awesome game there. The product line.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I haven't played yet, so I haven't discovered the awesome game. But I have on a good authority from many people that it is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, it's just, I'll have to, I don't know, as you say, maybe proxy some things up. Starter set was good. That's good for one person, but if you're like me, who always has to come up with both armies for both people.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I did. Oh, no. Oh, I bought a Warlord today.
Oh, no.
I've forgotten. I did. And in classic form, I have to say, I went onto eBay thinking, I'll get it cheaper because in New Zealand it's like $183 for a Warlord. Right?
Eye-watering.
Eye-watering. I mean, the starter set was $259. So, so I thought, no, I'll save some money. I'll go onto eBay, and I saw it for sale from someone in the UK and bought it. But because there's the exchange rate, the shipping, the GST, all these sort of hidden, especially the GST, they don't tell you until the end and blah, blah, blah. It ended up coming to $175. So I saved $8. And it's going to take about 4 times as long to get here. So.
Oh, well. I mean, so the thing about Adeptus Titanicus that I've been messing around with is because I like to create forces that work for multiple games. So I've been creating little forces that will work for both Adeptus Titanicus and Gamma Wolves, because ultimately these are both doing similar things, which is stompy robots smash at each other. But so this one's doing
Gamma Wolves to me, because when I think Gamma Wolves, I think of Gamma World, and I thought there was something after Gamma World that was called Gamma Wolves.
So Gamma Wolves is Ash Barker's new game, and it's about it's basically like a mech warrior sort of mecha combat thing. Okay. So this game, so they're both giant robot games. This game is much more about managing a Titan as if it's a sort of functioning battleship where it has crew and lots of different, resources that you have to move around, and you're ordering your like, it's extremely lumbering. Whereas this is much more about like a dynamic game of the frame that the pilot is in has got its own stresses and different, and is trying to, do certain things. And then the pilot is a different resource. And so the stress of the pilot and the reactions of the pilot. So it's a really cool system in which you've got, in which you've got sort of heat and stress on the frame, and you've got like stress and panic on the pilot, and managing those two different resources is the core of the system. So I'm building forces that can function from both, because I think that both games are really super interesting and give you this like small model count giant robot combat, but one is
wasn't
really
there like a games, there was like a Games Workshop figure of a sort of marine inside a kind of huge suit.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, you could have like a sort of dreadnought, then one of the Marines in the power suits, and then maybe like one of those chunky new. But yeah, so in Gamma Wolves you've got 3 weights of frame. You've got heavy frames, medium frames, and light frames, which is obviously very akin to your Warlords, your Warhounds, and your Reavers. So I think it's all totally transferable, and you can create something with 3 sizes of cool science fiction-y mechanized doodad, and then play them both.
So this is the thing that I admire about you, is that you play with all the stuff and the rules and the figures. I feel, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I'm kind of hidebound into systems and making sure everything's a bit perfect, and and the classic thing is my summaries. I don't play the game until I've done the summary, and I've got a foam core insert, and it's just, when I was a kid, I used to tidy up my room for fun. What can I say? It's just like that kind of thing. And yet I really admire that. It's like artists. When I wanted to be an artist rather than a graphic designer when I was younger, I really admired artists who had really messy studios and paint everywhere and really into it. And I knew I would never be like that, because all my paint would be in perfect rows according to hue and all the rest of it. And so I see what you're doing, and I just think, it looks kind of more fun, because you're just sort of playing around with all these systems, changing them yourself, modeling things, rebasing armada figures, I
guess that's just like that. I've never, since the very beginnings of my gaming experience, I've never seen it. I've never had any sanctity for the games. We cracked open Necromunda for the first time in 15 or 20 years, about maybe 6 or 8 years ago, and I opened the rule book and I read it, and there was a rule called pinning in it. I was like, I've never seen this rule before. And my friend John Brindley said, yeah, that's because when you got the Necromunda starter set for Christmas, you opened the rule book, went, what's this? This looks like it's going to be no fun at all. And we never played that rule in our entire young
never even tried.
And then I put it on the table as a grown-up, and I played it with the pinning rule, and I was like, wow, this is a totally different game. It's like, now it's like a first-person shooter, cover-hugging, run and gun thing. Whereas we just played it where people were just going, hello! So yeah, no sanctity for the games designer, which is why when people walk into my kind of Facebook communities and say, I'm thinking about hacking this off or changing this, I sort of say, well, do give it a go with that rule in, because I definitely put it in for a reason. But also, I'm not
you hypocrite.
I would do the
same. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I wish I could do it. I don't know.
Well, there are some downsides. There are some downsides, like never having a finished force for anything, because I'm already repurposing that force halfway through building it for a different game, and so yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah, so I've got a beautiful old 1993 Chaos Dwarf army, which is based in like 3 different ways, because it's taken me so long to paint it that I keep like breaking off detachments and playing something different with.
What do you think of like basic Warhammer stuff and Warhammer 40k and Age of
I haven't
Sigmar?
really played any 40k. I played a couple of games of maybe 5th edition or 6th edition. So I can't really comment on that one, and I don't know that there's just too many small indie games that I want to play to sort of. I haven't read any. I've got several of the 40k rulebooks. I haven't read 40k and gone, oh my goodness, I need to play this. And I watched a couple of battle ports recently, and I thought, I'm not really sure I'm that excited to discover what's there. Fantasy Battle we played a ton of, because I love the spectacle of big multiplayer fantasy battle games. So we used to play every Saturday. We used to play these like 6-player, 3-player aside, sort of 10,000, 12,000 point games. And for me, like that's why I got into Fantasy Battle in the first place, was to sort of get slowly to the point where we could do that. And once we were in a routine of doing that, it was actually just super fun. It was before I had kids, and we'd play for the whole Saturday morning and up until just after lunch. And I guess towards the end of that experience, I just realized that the rule system that we were playing was fighting against us, trying to have the best time with that. because Fantasy Battle ultimately has quite a lot of detail, particularly in the combat resolution. There's a lot of steps in every close combat, declaring challenges, accepting challenges, moving the models to the place where they should be, who can touch who, to hit rolls, to wound rolls, save throws, second saving throws. Like, there's a ton of detail in there, which when you've got a smaller force, like in 1993, when you saw the back of a white dwarf and there was 10 little dwarf warriors and that was an entire unit, and 8 quarrelers and that was another unit. I think it made much more sense at that scale. So actually a reaction, my getting into wanting to write games and sell them rather than just write them and play them was kind of, I suppose, a reaction to that, which I realized that I was just playing the wrong system, and I probably just should have tried to convince everybody to play maybe Warmaster or something just with 28 mil. But everyone was, enjoying the product line and enjoying the fact that new models were coming out and new army books were coming out.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it promises so much sort of chaos and fun and all the rest of it. But actually, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of looking up rules and a lot of
lumps. There's a lot of lumps.
Stuff getting in the way.
Experience.
Yeah. So I must admit, I've got a whole shelf of Warhammer 40k versions there, which I never played any of them. I just sort of would get them and then sit them on the shelf and think, oh, I think I'll play that. And then suddenly there was another version and then I'd get that one. But I did get the latest edition. What is it, 9 or something? And actually, in my usual way, sat down and painted all the figures first and did all that first and everything. And then finally actually played a game with all the forces in the 9th edition thing. And despite the fact that there is still that unbelievable amount of dice rolling, which is just crazy, and I just wish they'd just get rid of the bit to wound, just roll to hit and then save. That's all you got to do. I never understood the wounding bit. I know it's spreading out the percentages of whatever it is and giving them more granularity or something. But if they changed it to a D10 and just made it one roll or something like that, I don't know. That's beyond me. I'm not a game designer. But it was, despite all that, it was quite fun. It was very cinematic, and it was very over the top and gothic and huge, and there were bike charges and all that kind of stuff, and it was pretty full on. Just a little orc just entered the room there. I've been trying to kick my cat out of the way. It's been moaning here, softly kicking it out of the way.
Classic bit of
hey Dad, let me in.
She's
18. Yeah, it was pretty. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
She's 18 months. What?
She's 18 months and she just wanted a huggle.
Oh, nice.
Beginning of the day. So
yeah, so it wasn't bad. It was cinematic. It was fun, but it took ages, and yeah, there's that point where it just sort of clogs down in dice rolling, and it's just like, oh, come on, we want to get to the end now. We know what's going to happen. So. Yeah,
the to wound mechanic is interesting because I was reading a magazine article that Joe McCulloch wrote recently, I think in War Games Illustrated, and he called out one of the most elegant combat systems that he's experienced is the one in Silent Death, where you roll a dice, and the way that the dice works is that it both indicates to hit and also what the sort of whether it does damage and then whether it does critical hits. And I played the heck out of Silent Death when I was a kid. I haven't played it since then, so it's probably
never played it, never heard of it.
But the mechanic in A Billion Suns is quite similar. Like, I've tried to compress quite a lot of mechanics into a single dice roll, and I think actually being reminded of that meant I think maybe I sort of, in the back of my mind, I was always aware that there was a more condensed way of resolving a to hits to wounds critical situation, and that things that take that and rule systems that take that and break it up into multiple things, particularly things that have tables that you need to look up, I'm always disappointed by.
It's pretty old-fashioned, the table thing.
It's just a clunky user experience. Like, at the table, I want to know what's happening as fast as possible, and anything where I have to cross-reference strengths and toughnesses, like you can start to remember that stuff, but I think it ultimately it's a clunky user experience. So yeah, so in A Billion Suns, there's a slightly wacky combat resolution system which tries to pack a lot of things into a single dice roll. So, which I'm pretty happy with, where you grab a specific shaped dice. So if you've got a really heavy weapon, it's going to be rolling a 12, or if you're rolling a very light weapon, it's going to be a d6. And then what you're trying to roll to hit is the ship silhouette. For a small ship, that might be a 2 or a 3. For a medium one, that might be a kind of a 5 or a 6. And the biggest ones will have silhouettes 8, 9, and 10. So if you're trying to hit a little ship and you need a 1 or a 2, it's actually easier to do that on a little dice than it is to do it on a big dice. So light weapons are better at hitting small ships. And if you are shooting, say, a silhouette 6 thing, then literally any dice will hit with these. So with a little weapon, like you're shooting a barn door, you're not going to miss the barn door. But these things only do 1 damage, and these things do 5 damage. So it's a little bit harder to hit a big ship with a lumbering weapon, but when it hits, it's going to do 5 times the damage of this thing. And then when you roll the lowest number, which is a 1, I don't know why I said the lowest number. When you roll a 1, that counts as 2 hits, just like in Gaslands. When you roll the best number, it does double. So your dice will kind of explode. And then if you roll the
I always forget when I'm playing Gaslands.
Right. And then if you roll the highest number, then that's a dud, and it always misses. So although the barn door will hit on a 1 to 6, actually a 6 is always a failure. So there's always a possibility. Yeah, so that, and like that, then there is
there must have been a sort of eureka moment when you came up with that. That's brilliant.
Well, it was in the very, very first version of the game, but I wrote it so that there was a scale from 1 to 10, and then I put ships on that scale. So I was like, well, little ships will be 1 to 3, medium ships will be 4 to 8, big ships will be like 6 to 12. Because for some reason, like that was like the battleships thing. It's like I was sort of drawing silhouettes, like the battleships game with the pegs.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But then as it got through development, I was trying to solve the problem of how do you do saving throws, and I ended up shuffling everything so that all silhouettes started at 1, and then it was 1 to 3, 1 to 6, 1 to 12, or 1 to 10, or whatever. And then that was cool, because then you pick up the same. What you could do then is you could pick up the same dice that have hit you. So if you've been hit by 3d6s, or if you've been hit by 2d12s, you pick those things up and then you roll those as saving throws. And now a good saving throw, like a save value of 5, like that's a super easy saving throw to make on a d6. So d6s are also less able to penetrate shields, but it's much easier to make on a d12. So heavy weapons are more easy to penetrate shields. So no modifiers, it didn't need anything, just clever use of the right shaped dice. And I was super happy with that.
That also answers the question I was going to have later on, which is why low numbers are better, because that always frustrates me, but that works perfectly.
Yeah, it's because of the fact that there's lots of different shapes of dice, and so I needed to align them down at the bottom of that spread so that they all had 1s, even though they don't all have 12s.
Yeah, genius. So this is I could never do stuff like that. I'm in awe. That kind of game design stuff.
It's just endless chipping at the game design mine. It doesn't happen overnight. Just keep chipping until something valuable falls out. Like
I was designing a card game once, so I tried to work on one, and I endlessly chipped at it. And every time I chipped at it, it got smaller and smaller until there was nothing left. And then eventually, I just had this sort of bunch of cards, and I went, "This is crap. There's no game here at all."
Yeah,
it's just gone. It was like a musician trying to get more and more ambient until eventually there was silence. So I thought, okay, that's not for me. I'm not very good at that. I do like things that I really admire people who do thematic games that are really sort of not overly complicated, but still really thematic. So I played Jaws the other day. It's the most recent one I played, so it's most in my mind. And I just, it was brilliant because it literally recreated stuff from the film, but it made you feel like you were the characters in the film, and recreated moments, even though the rules were really simple. We had a moment where the ship was sort of chopped in two, and my partner Carol was sort of trapped in a little corner of the back of the boat as the shark was going, and our friends were up the other end of the boat, safe, sort of not wanting to go anywhere near her. And it was just like, this is brilliant. It's perfect. It's Jaws. It's just absolutely spot on, and yet not incredibly complicated, but it just captured the feel of it so well. I just thought that's really simple.
I think that's the alchemy. That's the alchemy that I'm always looking for. That's the thing that either when I'm trying new games out or I'm designing games, because I think that, like, I 100% believe that, like, theme and mechanics are in the medium of games. They have to be extremely entangled, and the sort of the visual image. Like, it's interesting that you talk about that sort of boat being broken in half, because I think that quite often I stick with my game design, I hang on to a specific cinematic image, like a moment in time, like a car flipping over or a spaceship crashing, you know, like warping in and smashing other small spaceships out of the way, and that gives me this like physical and emotional description of what it is that I'm trying to convey, and then I try and make mechanics that feel like that have that same momentum or have that same acceleration.
But the interesting thing is that sometimes you come up with a mechanic which on first blush you look at it and you think, oh, that's just weird, and it's not till you start playing it. I mean, I'm immediately thinking of Gaslands, the first time I played Gaslands, and I just went, I don't get this whole idea that I get extra goes because I'm going faster and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't seem to work until I played for the first time and went, oh, it's brilliant. It works perfectly. And you really get that feel. And I think that's pretty amazing. You're just coming up with something which on paper just sort of seems to not work, but actually in practice really works. And I think that kind of really reflects the fact that you play around with stuff so much and you fiddle with it and you tear it apart and you muck around with it.
Yeah, so it's not a super, like, I don't keep it totally cerebral. Like, a lot of the problems that I was resolving in Gaslands, I would genuinely sit there idly smashing toy cars into each other, like sort of thinking, how is this supposed to work? Like the collision system particularly took a lot of iterations to get right, and there were points where I was just bashing cars into each other going, how does physics work? Yeah, but I think that's right. Like, you got to push the
stop. I'm working here. Leave me alone.
It's important. This is my life's legacy.
This pays for the food in this house.
But yeah, so I think like one thing that I'm super suspicious of is engines. So when I see a role-playing game or a sort of series of miniature games which have an engine where you reuse the rule set several times in different themes and different settings, I can see why from a sort of user experience point of view that's quite nice, because I don't have to learn new rules. But I feel like from a games design point of view, it's a huge missed opportunity, and it's probably just a worse way of designing game experiences, because if there's a system that is functioning well for a given sort of type of play experience, for a type of narrative, for a type of cinematic experience, for a kind of set of interactions, I feel like it's highly unlikely that that's the most effective way to communicate the excitement of the next thing. So I can take the Gaslands rules and I can say, well, this works for spaceships. Like I could have a kind of X-Wing type thing, but actually I want to tell a different kind of thing. And so I'm not going to just take a rule system that already exists and just bolt on a different theme. I want to change it because there's going to be something different about that. And in Blaster 1 with Martian Racing Federation, which is a standalone game that you get in that, it's sort of similar. It's like, well, you could play pod racing, and many people have, with just the standard Gaslands rules, and you plod along and you do the normal thing. But I was like, well, that doesn't feel right. It should feel like these are significantly faster. And so that's where this idea of laying multiple templates comes out, because although ultimately it ends up being the same, the fact that you've put multiple templates down, it's like zoom, I feel like zoom, and there's a trail of sort of smoke coming behind me, and it feels different. And so I think that's what I'm excited about in terms of
I haven't read those rules
games.
yet. How do you have the space to do it? Is it a sort of treadmill type thing or something? I haven't.
There are two scenarios in the book. One is a treadmill and one is not. So, I mean, if you've got like a 4x4 table, you've got plenty of space to sort of pod race around. You just have to choose a lot more turns. And then the other scenario is called Canyon Run, and basically each round you need to move fast enough to counterbalance the fact that the table is going to push you back again. So there's a sort of current that you're fighting against, and then each round you generate more and more rocks at random, and so by the time you get to like turn 4, it's just, broadly speaking, like a wall of rocks coming towards you. You have to get through the little gap that's remaining. So that one's like that one's a last as long as you can rather than win.
Oh, and the other one that's an issue too of Blaster, which is fantastic. There's so much good stuff in there, and I don't even play most of the games, but it's still inspiring stuff. And now I've forgotten the name of it. Mystic Skies, which is basically wizards zooming around on magic carpets while their minions do battle below them, trying to protect your towers and stuff like that. But also uses the Gaslands templates, which is really cool.
Yeah, I had an idea and I failed to pitch it to a couple people for an actual real game, which is Gaslands meets Frostgrave. And so once that phrase was in my brain, there was no way that it wasn't turning into a game. And that was the genesis of Mystic Skies. Although also the 90s video game from Bullfrog, Magic Carpet, where you have a big tower and you are collecting mana and building more and more powerful spells. But yeah, I played some Mystic Skies over the weekend with Sean Sutter, who's the guy from Relic Blade who I collaborated with, and I am so excited about Mystic Skies. I think it's a really fun game. It exists in a standalone form in Blaster, but I think it's unlikely that we won't do something else with it at some point in the next couple of years. Particularly because Sean has been starting to create miniatures for it. So there are gnomes and goblin spellcasters on Magic Carpets that he's making available later this year. And it's a really fun game of your wizard can move really fast and all over the place. So he can get up to 6 activations in a single turn, zooming all around, casting spells. And he can't be hurt, and he doesn't really bump into anybody. And all of his spells get cast automatically. So he's sort of like your wizardy cursor in a real-time strategy game. So, but the problem is he can't be everywhere. So if he's zooming off to drop a load of minions around the enemy tower, that's great. But then there's no one defending the tower. Or if he's orbiting around the tower, dropping defenders and managing the monsters and so on that are coming towards you, then he's not over there affecting the battlefield over there. So the intent of the game is to be like, you are an all-powerful wizard who's surrounded by idiots and just has to get everything done himself. Oh, for goodness sake. And so you can bring out these minions and you've got these monsters constantly pouring out of portals towards you. But it's a game of an overworked and busy magician trying to run his own empire.
These fools.
You just can't get the minions these days. So I would recommend people pick up Blaster Volume 2 and have a look at it. Like I would say, like for the cover price, I would say it's worth it alone for Mystic Skies if you're interested in a very unique skirmish game.
So what's in number 3?
Oh, I'm very excited about number 3. So the thing that I'm contributing to number 3 is a thing grandly called Gaslands: Legacy.
Oh, nice.
And so I've been playing a bunch of.
Sorry, what does it have to do with colons, though?
Colon Legacy.
It's a bit strange. Anyway, I appreciate you going to different places in your game design.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. It's a bit like that 80s movie where they shrink the guy and he has to go and solve the medical problem. What's that? Inner Space. Yeah.
Only very quickly. High speed.
A bit like Tyranid Attack, the old board game. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, a colon is, lots of curves.
Good racetrack. Yeah.
Obstacles. It's a good racing game. You can have that one.
Yeah. So I'd been struggling to write the next thing for Gaslands to expand it because I'm super cautious of adding a bunch of bloat in terms of weapons and vehicles that aren't needed. And I've hit on this really exciting idea where you grab a toy car and you turn it over and you read the name that's written on the toy car and you go to gaslands.com/legacy and you type that in. And you get a random card generated for you, and so it will tell you what your stats are and what your perks and weapons and so on. So the game works. The Gaslands Legacy that will be in Volume 3 of Blaster is a narrative campaign. So it's 10 missions, and all of those missions are very carefully linked together. And depending on what you do inside those missions and what decisions you make, some clues and different paths may become open to you. But throughout that, you're playing with these kind of legacy generated cars that every time you play a game you might get some additional improvements to those cars, and you do that by going back to the gaslands.com/legacy page and mashing the give me some more stuff. And so there's lots of choices inside the campaign, but it's not about spending experience to improve your car. That sort of happens somewhat out of your control, although the things that you get given are like buy a new weapon that costs up to 4, and so you can go and choose what that is. And then there's also some legacy elements also in the there's some other things. You will have to print off some paper templates for your team at the beginning of the campaign, and then that should indicate that some things will likely happen to those templates across the course of the story.
Oh man, sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and it's just an excuse to get people to play a bunch of Gaslands in order. And most of the scenarios are straight up scenarios from the book. There's a few custom ones buried in there, but then they're wrapped in a sort of narrative wrapping and some additional kind of objectives and story mission conditions, so that you're playing basically all of the missions through the Gaslands Refueled book, but you're doing it with special cars in a cool story. And then by the end, you're going to get asked to build a sort of particularly awesome centerpiece miniature to finish the campaign off. So yeah, it's intended as a fun kind of event for 2 to, I guess, 8 players to enjoy together.
Fantastic. Yeah, I really like the idea of more of the stuff where it takes out the grind of miniature gaming, because there is sometimes when I play a game and I think I literally spend 1% of my gaming time actually playing the game, and the rest of it is building miniatures, painting them, getting terrain, preparing the game, making nice reference sheets, blah 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 blah. And I really, it's like, have you played Warcry? Have you tried that?
No, I haven't tried that one.
Ah, well, I mean, the amazing thing about Warcry that was so different and sort of revolutionary is that the whole setup is decks of cards. So you have a deck of card for the terrain, and it actually gives you a little map, and you can set it up with the terrain in the box. I mean, this is astonishing for Games Workshop. You can buy extra war bands and everything, but you had all the terrain and everything in the box. So you had a card that set up the terrain. You had a card that you had your forces, and you divide them into 3 different groups, and then you had a deployment card that used those 3 different groups and how they deploy, or if they came in as reserves and stuff like that. And there'd sort of be a scenario card that said what happened, and then a twist and all this kind of stuff. So just going through these cards, it took you through, it was like a little mini game at the start. It took you through the whole setup procedure. Still, clunky in some ways, but you didn't have that thing of like, okay, we're playing this scenario now. It's the same one every time. Because of the endless combinations of these decks of cards, you'd have countless variations of how the game would be set up, and you didn't know what it was before you started. So it was part of the fun of discovering what you were going to actually do with your forces.
Yeah, I do really like games like Malifaux, and I did it in A Billion Suns, and Adeptus Titanicus has it as well. I like games that have like a mode of play where it's not just like there's a straight meeting engagement battle, but that you draw some cards and that those give you your objectives, either secret or revealed, and that the game then immediately becomes something different. We played Adeptus Titanicus last weekend, and one person was trying to keep people out of their deployment zone, and one person was trying to get a secretly written down mech into the end zone that's carrying some kind of secret message. And so immediately the game was not just a line them up and push them forward, because there was some tension where I didn't want to come too far forward because I needed to be defending my backline, and he needed to be absolutely powering in, but he wanted to not be too obvious about which was the model that was the one that mattered. And yeah, I just think systems like that, where by drawing a couple of cards or a couple of missions, and I think ideally asymmetrical missions, then like a story just emerges immediately from that, rather than being like, why are we here?
Adeptus Titanicus game sounds good. Maybe I should get that. Is that good?
Maybe you should play it.
There was a game called Wrath of Kings that tried to do that with something called motivations, and you'd have a motivation, you didn't know what the other player was doing, and it was by Simon, and to me it never seemed to work for some reason in that particular one, because the motivations didn't seem to work in a way that they were sort of self-contained on each side, and they didn't sort of work together very well, and you sort of felt like and also they didn't lead to any kind of story feeling in a way. It was really frustrating. So that was an example of, they tried to do it, but it didn't quite work. And also it had a frustrating, and I've got heaps of miniatures for it. The miniatures are beautiful, but the game system had this strange thing where you rolled a die, and then the hit result was on the target's unit card. So the actual target player would read out what the result was of what you did. And I just thought, doesn't that take out the most fun thing in miniature gaming, which is going, I need a 6 or above, and now I'm going to roll it, and going, hurrah, I got it. Whereas in this one, it was like I'd roll a 6 and I go, well, what's the result?
Yeah.
And the person would say, oh, sorry, that's a miss. Oh, hold on, but you've got this icon that adds 1 to it. So that's a 7. So yes, that is a hit.
Yeah.
I thought, how did that get through to final thing? And it's an okay game, but it's just like, I just thought what we're talking before is the mechanics of the psychology of the game. I mean, that takes away the fun part of gaming. And it's like, oh, I've come up with a mechanic. It's really clever, but forgetting that it's not fun. It's clever.
Yeah, it's the play experience that matters. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It smacks of somebody coming up with something where it's like, well, this is not normal, therefore let's include it. And once it's included, then it doesn't get cut out. Because I'm a sucker for doing that. Like I will include a ton of rules that are just like, well, this is the not normal way. So let's see if the not normal way is fun, because that would be both novel and fun rather than just fun. But then I'm really cautious to find those things and cut them out if they aren't doing anything or if they're doing the wrong thing. Like simple stuff like I have tended to always put saving throws in, because in my testing, when you get somebody that throws dice against, if you just roll attack dice and then it automatically leads to taking models off or applying wounds, there seems to be something unpleasant that happens on the other side of the table where people go, but I didn't get to say anything about that. And so the 6s for evading on Gaslands is kind of like, it's the most perfunctory, but it's enough. It's like, I'm going to throw some dice and I'm going to possibly knock a couple of those out. And in Gaslands, you mostly take as much damage as you receive on the hit rolls. But just including that additional step, although it's an additional, it's a time sink. It's like, okay, somebody else has to pick up some dice and roll them. Like there's an agency where it's like, well, this is a two-way thing. There are bullets coming towards me, but I've got something to say about it because I want to roll some dice. And every time I try and take that out, it feels like the player experience.
It's all about the social thing. There's 2 people are involved in the combat phase, not just one. I mean,
yeah, totally. Important. This is the sort of rambling conversation about all of the games that I would love to have more regularly.
Yeah. Well, I feel a bit isolated sometimes down here doing all this stuff, and it's really good to share gaming thoughts with other people, especially very articulate ones like yourself.
Nice. Well, it's a pleasure. And again, like thanks for sacrificing your actually playing games time for endlessly creating beautiful rule summaries. I hope that you do get to play. I wonder what's your percentage of like game rule summaries that you've never actually used to play a game? Is that
no, you'd be surprised. There's not too many of them, and I rarely actually do a summary for a game that I don't have myself. I occasionally do it as a favor to Patreon supporters or something, but there's usually a kind of selfish motive there, in that I've got the game and I want the rule summary, and I would have done it anyway. Let's face it, if I had the game, so I might as well share it.
Mm-hmm. So if anybody wants to find out about my stuff, there's a couple of places you can go. One is gaslands.com if you want to learn more about Gaslands and smash toy cars into each other. If you want to learn about my new game, A Billion Suns, then it is abillionsons.space. Who knew that was a URL?
Excellent.
And if you want to learn more about Blaster, you can go to blaster-mag.com.
I highly recommend everyone get Blaster magazine. It's fantastic. Also, beautiful graphic design, I have to say. Props to the guy who did the graphic design.
Yeah, he's Greg is absolutely tremendous, and he is a real-time, proper highfalutin graphic designer who works for real companies. But he's just incredibly enthusiastic about the miniature games that we're putting out. So he pours his heart, probably too much of his heart, into that.
This is the great thing, because we actually grew up with this stuff. We are now all highfalutin people in our industries, but with skills, but we still love games. So that's a good thing. All my stuff, show notes, all the links down there. You know the drill. So check it all out. orderofgamers.com. And thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah. Speak soon.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.